Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome in to the Inequality Podcast. I am your host, Twana. And of course, I am always just making sure that everyone can hear me. So that's always the first task of the day. So if you're out there on Twitch, especially, could you please just let me know that you are able to hear me this afternoon? I think I said good morning. It is afternoon for me, probably evening for everyone. So, hey, Twitchers, YouTubers, and those of you who have joined us on Facebook, welcome to the Inequality Podcast. I'm your host, and I want to say thank you for taking the time out to join in. If you are in Twitch, of course, we've got a couple of people who are going to be taking care of your questions, any comments that you have. Please make sure that you highlight any questions or comments that you want to make sure gets in on the show. If you don't highlight them, sometimes they can be kind of difficult to find and scroll through. So just highlight any comments or questions that you may have, and we'll make sure that we take breaks and address all of them. As usual, in the chat, we'll have all of the information and resources that I've used to prepare for the show today. That's if you're in Twitch. If you're on YouTube or Facebook, all of the information will be contained in the description on those respective pages. So I like to share everything with you that I find on these internets. And so feel free to listen to, read over the next week, because there's a lot of information. Excuse me. I also want to make sure that we kind of talk a little bit this morning. I have a poll question for you, okay? Because of the conversations that we're having, and because of all of the news about CRT and whitewashing history and education, I want to know if they taught Black history in your school when you were growing up, whether you were in elementary school or high school, college. Did you learn about Black history outside of, the normal Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X? Hey, Tall Pumps, welcome in. Good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining. I really, really appreciate you. We have an awesome, awesome show today. So again, be respectful, engage in the chat. We are Inequality. If you could follow, subscribe, all of those things that you do when you are on Twitter or Facebook or YouTube. I really appreciate your support and could use your support. So talk about it, spread the word. We have an awesome time over here, and I hope that you have an awesome time over here.
All right. So, again, I'm Twana's Twitch, and this is the Inequality Podcast, where we aim to be that space between inequality. The mission is to provide the space to learn, grow, shift our perspectives, share ideas, and challenge social norms in a positive way. We will work to move from having conversations to effective action, disrupting the complacency we have towards inequality in the richest country in the world. Every subject will be approached with an open mind and the chance to see things in a different light, hopefully, and do the same for the audience. Being in this space means that we advocate for people who have equal opportunities to improve their lives. We begin to help others to remove their blinders while we're also removing ours. We need to see other people, appreciate their perspective and their journey. My wish is that we all recognize that everyone wants and deserves the same things in life, right? Be a valuable contributor to our communities, live in a safe neighborhood, free of crime, thriving, not just surviving. So, if you've watched or listened to any of this year's episodes, you should know that we are dedicating all of this year to celebrating Black history. But this is the first show of Black History Month, and I have a phenomenal guest on to get us started off right. Slavery is a touchy subject, especially these days. The fact is that we could still use a course or two or three on the subject. If, for no other reason, but to keep it on the minds of Americans, right? Until we finally get reparations. I feel like the whole reason why we're just trying to make sure everything goes away is because the talks of reparations are really starting to get moving. And I think there's a really big push for that. So, we want to keep this conversation going, right? Tall pumps, cut the check. We'll tie the subject together with conversations about the preamble to the Constitution, the Dred Scott case, Ethnic Equality Month, and Pan-Africanism. But first, before we bring in our guests, I want to take a few minutes to talk about our hearts. All right, so February is American Heart Month. And as you know, I've had a few issues with my heart and my health over the last year. Maybe you don't know about the heart yet, but we're going to talk a little bit about it. Through everything else I went through last year, somehow I came down with this condition called premature ventricular contraction, which means that my heart gives a little extra beat every once in a while. And I can feel it. It's like a real feeling when my heart skips the beat, and it really, really scares me. It scared me. And so I started seeing a cardiologist. I just got the news last week that my heart is perfect. Those were the words that she said, that my heart was perfect. I was so happy. Everything was fine. She thought maybe my heart would be a little enlarged because my blood pressure was high. And I was telling this lady, listen, my blood pressure is not high. My top, number is usually somewhere between 122 and 127. And my bottom number is always under 70, 6, we're somewhere around 70 and 80. So all this time I thought I had awesome blood pressure, but no, I didn't. So let me see if I can bring this on, because we are definitely going to pay attention to our hearts this year. All right. Let me see. I'm going to scroll down. I want you to go. Of course, this is in the chat. I'm looking at the chat. There's all kinds of stuff in there that should not still be in there. So I don't know where the disconnect is. I will figure that out. But there's going to be a lot of stuff in the chat today. But I've got this one in. It is the Arizona Heart Association. But if you just go to the American Heart Association, you can find the one that's in your state, in your city. But I want to play this because this is very, very important. It's a really short video. So give me a moment. Please bear with me. It is. Thank you. All right. Well, I just learned that you guys could not hear that video. However, I still want you to go and take a listen. What it pretty much said was that there's a certain range that your blood pressure should be in. Normal is under 120, and the bottom number needs to be under 80. Mine was nowhere. I always thought that it was good. So this year, we are going to focus on our health. I actually started a Facebook group on the Inequality Podcast page. So go on, you can go on the group, we can join, help each other become heart healthier and fit this year. All right, so I've had enough of that. Chanel, can you still hear me? I just want to make sure that everyone can still hear me. All right. Dr. El-Kati, I'm getting ready to bring you in now. So first of all, I just want to make sure that I have my wonderful video up here for you as I introduce you. And then I will bring you in just a moment. Let me just make sure that I'm going to loop this just in case I don't talk enough about this wonderful, wonderful man. All right. So Dr. Mahmoud El-Kati is a lecturer, author, and commentator on the African American experience. El-Kati is Professor Emeritus of History at Macalester College in St. Paul, Minnesota. He was also one of the founders and first professors in the African and African American Studies Department in the University of Minnesota. Professor El-Kati was influential in the development of the Pan-African Conference at Minnesota State University, Mankato, with Dr. Michael Fagan, which is still occurring after 40 years. Over the decades, he contributed to many community educational institutions in the Twin Cities, such as the Way, Opportunities Unlimited, KMOJ, Center for Communication and Development, Asili Institute for Women of African Descent, and In Black Ink, a statewide publishing arts initiative. Professor El-Kati is the author of many books. You'll find a link in the chat that will take you to an Amazon list. There are also in YouTube and Facebook, so you'll be able to find them everywhere. El-Kati has written for several local and national periodicals, such as the Minnesota Spokesman Recorder, Insight News, the New York Times, the Nigerian Times, and the Star Tribune. Dr. El-Kati earned his BA in sociology at Wilberforce University, HBCU in Ohio. He has received honorary doctorate degrees from Merritt College in Oakland, Augsburg University in Minneapolis, and Macalester College in St. Paul. Macalester College has continued his educational legacy by establishing the Mahmoud El-Kati Distinguished Lectureship in American Studies, an annual lecture on campus by a leading national Black scholar. Mahmoud's intellectual, educational, and institutional works can be found on his website, also listed in the chat. As a leader, scholar, activist, he has fought against white supremacy and has educated generations on how to dismantle and discredit this world's ideology. He has taught that the key to Black people is liberation. The key to Black people's liberation, next to education, is institution building within the Black community. Institution building within the Black community. He has orchestrated, he has orchestrated liberatory educational programming for the community in all social spaces, from schools to prisons to rural Minnesota. His lifelong dedication to the ongoing struggle for freedom, justice, and liberation is reflected in his students and mentees. Mahmoud has mentored thousands of students and community members. These mentees have gone on to build many institutions that continue to benefit the community. They have given back to the community in ways and in the spirit of each one teach one. So let me bring in Professor El-Kati now. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Awesome. Now, what I need to do is make sure that I bring this sound back over here where I can hear us the best. Okay. How are you doing today?
Well, how are you doing, Tuana? That's an overwhelming introduction. I don't know if I can live up to what you just said about me and my somewhat stormy life. Yeah. So, but I'm delighted to join with you, and I really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you
Um,
so
oh,
much.
absolutely. This is how we're going to get it done. Um,
Absolutely.
this is African American History Month. In about 3 years, that would add up to 100 years that we've been doing this. I mean, our community, our people, celebrating, commemorating um, African American History Month of the history of African people in America, however you want to say that.
Yes.
Um, it's remarkable. In 3 years from now, when we talk, it would be the 100th anniversary for Black History Month, which incidentally, we've got to always remember this. It didn't come out of the sky. It comes out of the mind of a great African American scholar, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who founded the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, and now the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. That's what history is about. Part
Yes.
change. It
Yes.
shows growth and understanding. Um, we were once, and we once called ourselves, which is a misnomer, Negroes, but most black people know better. Now there were no Negroes in Africa now or then.
Right.
No African ever called himself a Negro that I have met. And I've been to Africa a few times, and I don't know of anybody that calls themselves as a basic identity by that by their color.
Right.
That's not black, white, yellow, however these people don't identify themselves by the color of their skin as to who they are. That is, and I'll get to that one part of white supremacy, why we do that.
Yeah.
Um, People are named themselves or are named by, in a sense, land. That's what land, that is geography, that's what
Okay.
language and culture. That's who you are, anybody. If I'm in Africa, I'm a Hausa, I'm a Yoruba, I'm an Igbo, I'm a Kosa with Mandela's people, because there's a land that I come from.
Okay.
And I speak a language, Kosa. It tells you who I am. When I go to Europe, I don't meet any white people. I know what that means. But I meet Dutchmen, Frenchmen, and because there's a land, there's a language, there's a culture. Now we're coming out of that fog now. A lot of people are understanding how human beings define themselves. Any human beings.
Right.
It's not by the color of their skin, their race, which is a myth, and that's unfolding too. Uh, Race is a myth.
Okay.
Racism is reality. Well, you
That's
can,
very interesting
yeah.
because I've always had that conversation with people about, when did we, stop being black and start being African American, and when did that journey begin and how do we get here?
Mhm.
So you saying that, yeah, tall pumps, land, language, and culture. So it's a it was a something that was eventually going to happen, that we would connect ourselves back to Africa, but still
Yeah.
being American. Is that how it works?
Yeah, well, they're all people, including white people, of a basic identity. When you ask him who you really are, I'm Irish, I'm French, Dutch, Italian, and so forth. Race is false. It's a recent construction in human history, no more than, certainly no more than, no older than Columbus, which is a mere 500 years ago in history, where Europeans explored the world in a way that nobody else has, and exploited it in the way that would make Genghis Khan and Attila the Hun, Alexander the Great, wonder, oh my God, because Alexander the Great cried because there were no more worlds to conquer, and the world he knew was no bigger than Texas. So,
Yeah.
this is a new world. They were right about that. These two huge continents to the west of Africa and Europe uh, is a recent chapter in human history. There were no white people as people identifying themselves as white people. There certainly were no Africans or Asians or people from any geographic population. When you're talking about race, in essence, you're talking about geography.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
And you can see that by the people in certain regions of the world share a gene pool and the inherent characteristics, which gives you skin color, eye color, hair form, and so forth,
Right.
because they share a gene pool. And in human history, uh, human beings have always been perhaps the most traverse creatures beside the bird. And
Right.
going, going from place to place, we are the most, we lived in and live in every environment. Uh,
Absolutely.
Human beings do, the species does. And we've changed colors and hair forms depending on where we are, who we encounter in this small world that we now know. Uh, so we're getting rid of the thing called race. This is one of the things that Black Americans are doing and have done, is peeling that onion, exposing falsehoods about history and people. And in so doing, I think that African Americans are helping everybody. Without seeming uh, too Afrocentric, that we are the pace setters in this movement toward democracy. We're pace
Absolutely.
setters. We don't claim to be superior to anybody, and we're
Yes.
neither inferior to anybody. We're human beings with other human beings. We have history and culture makes us who we are, and values and beliefs and myths, real myths. Race is, as I said, is false, and I'll say more about that later. But the first thing I want to say about race, and we ponder this, um, if you don't understand the doctrine of white supremacy in America, you're going to be confused about everything else in America. It's
Yes.
a confused and confusing idea, race is. It is, in my view, the most powerful myth the human mind has ever conceived. There are myths. Human beings are myth making creatures. One time you could make people believe they're witches and get somebody killed.
Yes. And the earth is flat. And there's all
Yeah,
kinds of right.
yeah. So we know that people don't believe in incubi and little green men anymore. And that's why I think that race is a myth which creates a reality. and we created all of these things, for instance, about black people and other people too, native
Right.
people in America. And the people who are most responsible for that are European people. They're from a place called Europe collectively. But when you identify who they are, they're from certain spaces and places in Europe,
Right.
which is misnomer. Europe is not really a continent. There's six, you know, what we call Europe is the peninsula of Western Asia
Okay.
and two islands, the west of Western Asia. That's England and Ireland. They're not continents.
Okay.
They're islands, and they're part of Western Asia, the complex of people who live there, who, as I said, they have shared language, religion, and they are in proximity of one another. There's no
Right.
question about it, Ireland, England, but there are not seven continents. There's six.
Okay.
That, well, that's really there's Asia, which is the largest. There's Africa, which is the second largest continent. There are the two Americas, North and South America, and there's Australia and Antarctica. Those are the continents.
Okay.
Europe is not what we call Europe is not a continent. But you and I and others, that's the power of language and politics. And this is, I don't want to get into the critical theory thing because racism.
Yeah. We got to have that a whole conversation just
Yeah,
about
I don't
that.
want to go there. But we have to dismiss some of this foolishness. And I think uh, this is a real time of reckoning. And African people are at the center of it, particularly African Americans, because we are in this most powerful political, economic, I don't know about military, but certainly the most powerful economic and political system that human beings have ever known. I agree with the politicians when they say that America is powerful. I mean, technologically,
Yeah.
but you know,
Absolutely.
it would. An inside toilet would have blown the Pharaoh's mind. I mean, Egypt was an advanced civilization, but this is a powerful political, economic entity in a way that the world has never seen um, before. I think that's true. How long will it be true? Time will tell.
Absolutely.
Because things have periods, epochs. We live in an epoch of hegemony on the part of the West. And when I say the West, I mean that peninsula and the two islands that we call Europe. It has dominated world affairs for the most part in
Yes,
the
it
last
has. Yes.
400
Before
years. Yeah.
Dr. El-Kati, before we really start digging into the conversation, there's a question that I just wanted to keep up here to
Yeah. Sure.
ask you because Tall Pump said that if race is a myth, how does one experience racism?
Yeah. Yeah. Race, first of all, race is an idea. Like all ideas come from the human mind. And people, the modern European thinker, beginning really in the 17th, 16th century, brought that to the fore. Race the mistake is that we impose biology over people's culture. Culture is one thing. Race refers to the way people look. Um, there is some obvious aspects of it, your color of your skin,
Right.
the texture of your hair, the fold of your eye, the shape of your nose, whether you have a broad nose or a skinny nose, whatever, whether you have voluptuous lips or thin pencil lips. That's the way you look. That doesn't
Right.
tell. That's not who you are.
It's not who you are.
Who you
Right.
are comes through language and culture. Culture is who people really are. Culture is a way of looking at the world through your eyes culturally. It has nothing to
Absolutely.
do. One thing is biological, that is skin color, where you look. The other thing, which is biology, you inherit that through genes. You don't inherit culture through genes. You can switch cultures, change cultures. Your color's not going to change.
Right.
You as a human being can speak any language that other human beings speak, but it's not going to change your looks. You know,
Right.
the one thing is a biological fact that we get mixed up. Culture is really who you are, and that's shaped by language, um, history, uh, a complex of things that you experience through time and space. Whatever you live through, it forms a culture, and a culture changes. Like our culture is changing right
It is.
now.
It evolves.
Yeah,
Definitely evolves.
yeah, it evolves. That's right, and it's dynamic. Uh, our culture is changing again in a very conspicuous way because of the hip hop phenomenon, which people it comes from the wings of society. That's where all creativity comes from, the wings of society. These people,
Yes.
these African American people, and they're from the Caribbean and a certain space in America largely, and they know beginning in New York and so forth. And now you look at that phenomena, hip hop is like the lingua franca of of the world among youth. That it's it's powerful, and you got to. It's now it's in college curriculum.
It's
Think
in college curriculum.
about
And
it.
I also learned this week, just a side note, that they are convicting Black men through their rap lyrics in this country. And I didn't know
Well,
that. I'm just learning that.
oh yeah, oh
A
yeah.
whole
But
nother conversation.
it's changing the world, as I
Yes,
said.
it is.
It's the culture of currency among youth all over the world.
Yeah.
It is the new lingua franca. Because no matter it's every touches every language, so forth. I've seen it in Europe, seen it in Africa, the few places I've been, and of course in the West Indies. But it's changing everybody. You know,
Yes, it
just
is.
like, well, that's not color. That's black people created it,
Right.
but it doesn't have a color. That comes from such much deeper and people's existence. It deals with values. It certainly grows out of history.
Yeah.
What you experience through time and space. It's a particular experience um, shared by black people and of course with the world now, as we've always done that. We've changed, in my view, when you talk about American music, that's original American. You're talking about black music. Everybody plays it. Everybody tries to sing it.
Right.
Some people
Yeah.
try to dance. They try, but and that's not a put down. That's just a fact.
It's
You
just how it is. Yeah.
you can
That's
see this. That doesn't mean you're superior to anybody. Get
no.
that madness out of it, but it is different, and that's what culture is. It's
Yeah.
different. It's not better. It's just different, and you should have the right to be different because that's the way God or nature did it. You didn't make yourself. And we're coming closer to that. I mean, people, I think, are growing up. This Jimmy Baldwin said that that's what I want to do
Yeah.
with my life. I don't want to be white. I want to grow up, and so should white people want to grow up. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, that's where we are. We're like confused adolescents, trying to go to the next level of transforming ourselves. And that's the way I see it. and Black history is central to the outcome of what America will ultimately become. I believe that that's a hope, and I can, hope is a powerful thing.
It
I'm like a slave to hope. If
is.
you, if you lose hope, you're in real trouble.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah,
let's take a dive back into history then,
yeah.
and specifically slavery and how it's really impacted America. And I think I've just been thinking about it differently just since you've been talking, how Black culture has really become the normalcy in this country, and that all started from the fact that we are here, right?
Mhm,
So when I think about just the preamble to the Constitution, Dr.
mhm.
El-Kati, I
Yeah,
wanted to start here.
we,
Because it was written that we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, and we know the rest. But we, the people, is what I want to talk about, and how it was determined that that's how they would start this document, knowing that it did not include every person.
well, much like the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution itself is an ideal. It's not a reality. That's what you aspire to be, to achieve. And I think a qualifying statement in that is a more perfect union. I think they were right. Some people act as if America is a perfect union, that is a finished product. It is not, it's in process. This is not a democracy. It's
No, it's
being
not.
democratized. Let me um, give you a definition of democracy, which I think is better than any I've ever read or heard. And that is that democracy is a process, keyword, not a static condition. Democracy is a process, not a static condition.
Yes.
It is not being simply, but always becoming. It can be easily lost and never fully won. And its essence is eternal struggle. That's it. The essence of democracy is what we're doing now. You make democracy, you do democracy. It doesn't exist like a keepsake, like
It's a
people.
verb.
Yeah.
Democracy
No,
is a
you
verb.
you make it, you create democracy, you do democracy. That's been pretty much the role of Black people.
Yeah.
If you want to say that, this is we make democracy by challenging these ridiculous laws that they've had oppressing people and so forth. And I mean, we challenge uh, the people who run the country and who are the power brokers. Democracy is not a keepsake like the people in Washington talk about it. I mean, I'm talking about the left now.
And the right. Yes.
They're talking about our democracy. It doesn't literally exist. You can't keep achieving it. It's not a keepsake. It's not something you hang on. It's not a finished product. It is a process, continuous process. It is not being, but always becoming. And
Okay.
we're part of that. And it can be what? Easily lost and never fully won. And its essence is what? Eternal struggle.
Eternal
That's what
struggle.
Douglas is about. If there's no struggle, there is no progress.
Yes.
Yeah. Men who favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation are men who want crops without plowing the ground. You can't get it unless it's struggle. So you create democracy. The American um, the Declaration of Independence is an ideal that you hope to achieve. You wish it's inspirational, but they know
Yeah.
full well that in the midst of slavery, they were creating something very very awful at the time that the Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence. You can say all men are created equal, but that's not the fact on the ground.
Right.
He was a slave owner who exploited black people and made a black woman a special victim of his sexual appetites. And we're talking about,
Ooh, tell
yeah,
the truth.
yeah. Well, that's what we have to do.
Yeah,
That's what we
absolutely.
do. If it gets you killed, tell the truth. It's not. You want America to be great. It's never been great. I don't know what this is about. Let's
Yes.
make America great again. Like what?
For who? Yeah.
That, that's what the Germans said. It was Hitler said, when let's make Germany great again. It's
Yeah.
the same thing, that ideology, white supremacy, and fascism are first cousins.
Yes.
And we have many people in this country who are neo fascists. And they're just not just racist. These are the extreme types. We
Okay.
talk, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. One of the things that I've been learning about Minnesota is that the Dred Scott case actually started there.
Uh-huh.
And I had no idea. I was visiting my son who lives in Bloomington and passed by Dred Scott Park. And I was like, wait, what? There's a
Uh,
Dred Scott Park here.
yeah, yeah.
What can you tell us about that little bit of history in Minnesota as it pertains to, because we all know the Dred Scott case kind of solidified the fact that the reason why they don't mention us in the Constitution is because they don't think of us as men. They thought of us as property. And that's how I always see it. When they wrote
Yeah,
that Constitution, we the people didn't
mhm.
include us because we were not people, we were
No,
property.
yeah.
So talk a little bit about that.
George Washington called us a troublesome species of property. uh, Dred Scott is central in our struggle, which is still unfolding. He came to Minnesota when Minnesota was a territory. Slavery didn't exist. And he met his wife here, the lady. He eventually had 2 children because he lived here not very long, maybe 2 years or so. And the abolitionist movement was blooming. Good. These are the people, many of them, most of them were white people, and we should never forget that. See, don't fall in the race trap. We're not a race, we're a people. Black people are not a race, we're a culture. We're not a race, we belong to a specific history. Color doesn't make us who we are. Our experience makes us who we are. And that involves language and customs and habits and values and beliefs and feelings. That's peoplehood. Peoplehood is what Black people are. And I'm advancing the notion that we should not refer to ourselves as a race. That's another battle we got to win. You can let white people be a race. But that's nonsense. No, we're not a race, we're a people. And a people are shaped by history. We're a culture
Right.
shaped by history. We're a representation of a peoplehood amongst peoples of the world. That's all. Get rid of the word race. Now, I sound like 30, 40 years ago when we were fighting. But get rid of the word Negro. That was a tough battle. That was a tough battle. But we won that one. We won that one.
Yes.
The children that I taught at North High didn't know what I was talking about when I said Negro. That was great. I told them I was once a Negro. They said, "What is that?" But Dred Scott is a very important picture in the history of this country. It changed history.
It did.
But anyway, the abolitionist movement, he was a cause célèbre for the abolitionist movement, and they rallied around him. And it took 10 years for that case to get to the Supreme Court. And finally, it got to the Supreme Court in 1857. And the infamous statement from Chief Justice Roger B. Taney, who was a slave holder, and there were 9 people on the court, as they are today. And 7 of them were slaveholders. So, and he issued this infamous statement when Dred Scott sued for his freedom that we have viewed, he's talking about America, these people, black people, as beings of an inferior order. They are so far inferior that they have no rights that black white people are bound to respect. That's the Supreme Court. That's reiterating what the politics was saying, that we're not fully fledged human beings. We are inferior to white people. And that inferiority means intellectually, physically, morally.
Yeah.
That's the myth. Of course, more and more people are learning that now. Overturn that what the Supreme that the Roger B. Turner was our oppressor. He was on the Supreme Court. You have to say that. Not white, not just white. He's an oppressor.
Yes.
All white people aren't oppressors. He
Yes.
did that, and that followed, and it was reinforced when we finally got out of legal slavery in 1865 after the Civil War, in which our people helped to free ourselves. That's not mentioned in school curriculum, that there were roughly 200,000 black people who fought in the Civil War. One of them was my great grandfather. Anybody can say this, black people,
Right.
on my paternal side is my dad's grandfather. Yeah, my dad's grandfather was in the Civil War. People, we helped free ourselves.
Yes, we did.
Black people won 22 Congressional Medals of Honor in that war. That's the highest
Wow.
honor you can get for valor in this country. And they won that. That's the first time it was given during the Civil War. And black people in the won 22 Congressional Medals of Honor. They were in 447 battles. 40,000 died. That's, well, black people's got to claim that. We helped free ourselves. The
Yes.
Civil War wasn't just a white on white phenomena, or white people fighting other white people for our freedom. We were engaged in that. And I would argue, as Frederick Douglass would, as Abraham Lincoln would. He said, had it not been for the aid of the colored troops, we would not been able to put down the rebellion. He called it rebellion. It wasn't a civil war. It was a rebellion.
A rebellion.
Yeah, that's what the official name for the Civil War from the North. It's just like the official name in English literature for the American Revolution it's a riot. That's what they call it in English literature today. You see, it wasn't a revolution.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a riot.
Nice.
Much to the
Okay.
surprise of George Washington and others.
Well, now that just makes me think about why do they call what our protesting riots like that? That's just
yeah,
kind of strange
well,
to me. What's in a word, right?
well, you got to protest.
Yes.
It's not going to change.
Yeah.
And we got to continue to, this is why it's won, to risk our lives to free this country
Yes.
from its ills. It doesn't know, Americans don't know themselves very well. They do not. And they haven't, most Americans have no deep roots in America like black people. Black
Yes.
people were here from the get.
Right.
Well, there was a constitution they were talking about, a Bill of Rights from the
Yeah.
get.
Yes.
Before George Washington was born, Thomas Jefferson, all those guys,
Yeah.
You've been here. And let me tell you what Du Bois said about that. He put it, nobody can do it like Du Bois. He said, we, he said, your country, speaking to white Americans, How came it yours? Before the pilgrims landed, we were here. Before the pen of Thomas Jefferson etched the majestic words of the Declaration of Independence across the face of history, we were here. Here we brought our three great gifts: the gift of story, of song, of soft, stirring melodies in
Yes.
an ill harmonized and unmelodious land, the gift of sweat and brawn to beat back the wilderness, fell the forest, and lay the foundation to this vast economic empire 200 years before your weak hands could have done it. And final gift is the gift of spirit. This is a big thing that black people have much. Would America be America without her Negro people? That's a rhetorical question. Of course not.
Right.
Who built the wealth of this country? The oldest cities are built by black people. You know, Charleston, Savannah, New Orleans, Mobile. I mean, this is America couldn't be saying would America be America without her Negro people back then?
Yeah.
Of course not. And Americans know this. Certain Americans know this. I mean, the people at Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and the learned institutions, Emory, the Yale of the South, Vanderbilt, and Duke, and and University of California, Berkeley. They,
Yeah.
they they got all this stuff. They know more about this stuff than I could ever dream of. But
Absolutely.
they are protected. See, you can also colonize information, not just colonize people. You can colonize information, and this is what's
Yes.
happening now. We are forcing certain things to be revealed to the American public. I mean, the reparation question is that's an old question.
Right.
It was right after the Civil War, when for a time, during the Reconstruction period, for about 10 or 12 years, and it didn't last long. It was at once the most violent episode of our experience next to slavery, but it was also the most successful period up until that time of for black people doing. They were surrounded by violence. Reality is that way.
Yes.
Two things can be true at the same time.
Yes.
That's when we made a lot of progress. Most HBCU schools were built in that
Yes.
35-year period. We were
Absolutely.
among the most educated people in the world, if you go by the printed word, Black Americans, by the turn of the 1900s. In the 20th century, African American people, don't compare yourself to white people, the world, most people in 1900 weren't acquainted with the printed word. They couldn't read and write. Nearly half of the people in the world today can't read or write.
Yes.
Well, the point is that black people had or built universities and so forth by 1900, but white people were still calling us all these names: illiterate, intellectually deficient, and yet we were among the most, if you measure us against the world.
Absolutely.
Most of our schools were built as our institutions, banks, hospitals. There used to be 77 black hospitals. I think there are 30 now in America. Black people own 70 theaters, movie houses, but right up to uh, World War II. Insurance companies, some of us still heard of.
Yes.
We made a significant amount of progress in the midst of the most violent period, except for slavery,
Right.
that we experienced. Think about that.
I
Black-
do. I think about that a lot. I
yeah.
think about that a lot because I feel like because of the progress that we made, that's what brought on that intense violence because we came from and listen, I have some people on here, spiritual thought leader, tall pumps. We understand that our slavery DNA is powerful and we came from them having their foot on our necks, literally, to, like you said, creating all of these magnificent things. The African American experience in that time was amazingly violent, like you said.
Oh yeah, at the same time, one of
Yep,
our most creative period. Isn't that interesting?
it
Was
is.
during Reconstruction.
Yes.
Yeah,
We're going
that's
to talk about that the next time you come on, Dr.
yeah,
El-Kati.
yeah, that's a good. Yeah, that's a lot to talk about.
It is.
When black people were released officially from slavery, it didn't end. Reconstruction was another. It extended into that. But they because during slavery, yes, two things: marriage among most black people, because there was a class called freedmen. But for most black people, marriage was an illegal and unlawful entity. You couldn't marry the man you love, vice versa. We got around that.
Yeah.
But uh, finally, we jumped the broom. That's why now you publicly recognize that you love somebody. You found a way. We're creative people.
Yes.
Uh, the Hollywood would never make a movie, I think, on the episode when these 4 million people who were once called property were legally free from slavery, 1865. And the first thing on black people's bucket list, first two things, was putting together a family and education. That's true then, and it's true now. It's been hard for us to even have families, which is the strongest cultural unit in Africa, is the family. It became the weakest here because it not on its own, but the laws against familyhood in black people.
Yes.
And we still found a way to mate and make the best out of a bad situation. So after 1865, it took us a little time, about 35 years. In 1900, most families in Black America were two-parent families, something that people don't think about today because
Hmm.
the welfare and a lot of other things happened to set the black family back. But right up to and through World War II, it was two-parent families. Now, this is a post-World War II phenomenon of the one-parent family. So uh, we are a creative and a magnificent people. I wish I weren't black when I said this, but think you're black. But yeah, I think it's true. I think we're the best thing that ever happened to America.
I agree. There was a question before we get too far away from it. Tall Pumps did have another question for you. I flashed it up there so I could remember it, and now I'm just trying to get back to. Oh, here it is. She says that. Excuse me. She wants to know if you identify as a black man, or do you prefer to not identify according to a predetermined race? Like, we're all about pronouns and identification these
Yeah,
days.
yeah.
How do you
Well,
identify?
I identify as a black man and a man. I mean, there's no. I'm of African descent. Uh, I'm an Africoid type person. That's who I am. That I'm black is coincidental. You know, I didn't make, and you and black people didn't create this thing called race. That's a European problem.
Yeah.
Creation. Race, as the world understands it, and according to the rules, is a modern creation of Europe on the heels of the, the Dark Ages and the Renaissance, which brought them out of the Dark Ages. That's where all this stuff started, and that's about people's race. Race at one was a European affair at one time before it spread out to the world. Irish people were referred to as a race by other Europeans. Scotch people they weren't see the idea, see, but it got
Right.
bigger and bigger through exploration and encountering all these people. What the European noted when he went around the world is that he was not like other people, and beginning with the physical appearance when he came to America, North America, South America, Australia, New Zealand, uh, all over the world. He met colored people. The other thing is that the people they met were not Christian people, although Christianity goes back in Africa before it came to Europe. uh, some of the oldest Christian churches in the world are in Africa. And of course, Ethiopia was a Christian
Huh.
nation. It's also Jewish, you know. The language of Jesus was Aramaic. The Greeks got Ethiopian. That's one of the Ethiopian dialects. That's why there are Christians in Ethiopia.
Hmm.
And they translated it from Amharic into Greek. That's how the stories of Jesus got to the world. It
Wow.
started in Africa, and now it's all over the world. But that's it. The Greeks and the Europeans, of course, um, reference their existence from the Greeks, and they also drag Egypt into that because the Greeks learned from Egypt,
Right.
and Egypt really is, always has been, an African country. Yeah, who's there now? It's on the continent of Africa, and the Arabs are the last conquerors. Islam was the last conquerors, but Egypt was the prize of the ancient world. Everybody came there.
Okay.
Yeah. So that is another thing.
Yes.
We're I think we're going to be in good shape. We got a while to go. I think that this country is going to try to make it worse
Before it
before
gets
it
better.
gets worse for us.
It's gonna
But
get worse
we,
before it gets worse before it gets better.
yeah, that's that before we make it better. Yeah, but
Okay.
because there's an old saying, we're going through what we've been through, you know.
Yes.
And so we know this. It's a long struggle. But our struggle is righteous, it's pro human.
Yes.
The black struggle is pro human.
Yes.
Okay. It's not, you can be Afrocentric or whatever you're going to be, but it's about, we are not opposed to the human family. Never has been. And I think the moral system that's developed by blacks out of its slavocracy, which is what America was, where Christianity was fused into that. But I'm going to say this, and I don't know if you've ever heard this. I don't think that the United States of America is a Christian country. Christianity is not the religion of America. White supremacy is. No, that's a religion. And you say, how could you say that's religion? Religion is the thing to which people owe their highest loyalty. It's above everything. You understand?
Yes.
It's above, you know, Yahweh is above everything. Uh, Allah is above everything. Jesus,
Yes.
who was a man who became God, is above all the man made things in the world. Christianity has been displaced by a secular doctrine. White supremacy is just like communism. It's a secular doctrine. It's a secular religion. And that's why you call communism a religion, because what the communism owes its loyalty to the state, you know,
Yes.
to the state. and it make it clear that we are atheists,
Right?
which we owe our highest loyalty as a state. And Christianity has been overturned by this phenomenon moving through the world on all continents called white supremacy. You can now go anywhere on this planet, and I haven't been all over the planet, but wherever I've been, I've seen aspects, impressions of that doctrine. And that doctrine says no matter who the white man is, he could be an idiot, he could be a criminal, he could be. He's saying, I got to be the boss.
Right.
Supremacy. I got
Yeah.
to be the boss. I don't care. I know I'm ignorant, but I'm the boss. Because the white covers, and that's just true. You
Yeah.
don't have to argue that. The guy will tell you that race, this myth, this idea, is supersedes what you call religion or Christianity. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know what King and both Malcolm and King reminded us the most segregated hour of the week is the
Sunday.
Christian church.
Yep.
Other institutions are more integrated than Christianity.
Absolutely.
Schools are more integrated. But
Yes.
and so I think that I know I'm opening a can of worms, but I think that people should call white supremacy a religion. It's a doctrine. It's a secular, man-made doctrine, like communism.
Right.
It says to Putin, "I got to be the boss, who you are." And that's just. I didn't always think this way, but I do now because I don't know what else to say about this thing. People defending things that they know are untrue. I mean, the people who are, end quote, well educated, people are call themselves Democrats or Republicans, but mostly it's most expressed. And one of the most obscene things I've ever seen in my life was Donald Trump. You remember when they had the situation protest early in his administration in Washington, and he called out 4 white ministers from to stand with him in front of the church with the Bible turned upside down.
Yeah.
See,
That was
well,
during the protests, right? When they had
yeah,
to.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, who are these white ministers? You call them the right wing. What is it called? Conservative church. White, by and large, and I know some white ministers who are decent human beings.
Yes, of
I'm,
course.
I'm talking about the church by and large. The white church, the leaders of white churches are nothing but subterfuge for the maintenance of the doctrine of white supremacy. That's what they are.
Wow.
The subterfuge is what you use to hide something,
Yes.
but it's not.
Wow.
White supremacy is superior to Christianity. And this country was founded on that sad principle, cruel thing.
Yeah.
And you can't avoid that now.
No.
You can't. I know the big people are black people, white people who call themselves liberals can't see. It's in plain view, hidden in plain view
Right.
that this is a doctrine
Yeah.
that runs this country and much of the world. I started by saying, if you don't understand the doctrine, Neely Fuller taught, if you don't understand the doctrine of white supremacy, the doctrine, what I'm calling a religion, then you're going to be confused about everything else in this society. Because you got to deal with that first. That's
Right.
the common denominator for all the other things that have happened. You can't go anywhere we not touch. It's like the air.
Yes.
White supremacy is everywhere. You
And
can't
it's and
avoid.
it's not going anywhere.
It's
Like
not going
you
anywhere.
expect for, generation, eventually it won't be around anymore. It won't, or it'll be,
Well,
oh yeah, like every once in a while. But no, it doesn't seem to be going
well,
anywhere.
that's happening too. I think that the some of the a segment of younger white people who have been touched by the civil rights movement and by establishment of black studies and some of the major institutions have helped. And I know some of these people. Some of them have been my students, and some of them have thanked me, said, about, opening their eyes that what America is not it's not what it says it is. And I don't know if any country really is truthful
Right.
about who you are. That's a part of it. But America is so extreme with this business of the race thing and the violence uh, that it promotes is unprecedented. I think we had another say. I said it's going to get worse before it gets worse, and I believe that we're going to make it better, but it's got to go down the line. I
Right.
mean, the way people are killing one another and the advertisements of guns on the air and holsters, you can't ignore that. I would say that any given moment, uh, a shooting war will break out in some part of this country.
Wow.
It's already started. The people have already said that the people the insurrectionists who tried to take over the government, have said this is leading to civil war,
Yeah.
and they
I
mean
think they're
that.
looking for I think they're looking forward to it.
Yeah, yeah. They look well. They try to promote civil war. And
Mhm.
the young man, a young white man, 21 years old, went into, you know, Mother Emanuel Church in South Carolina and prayed with 9 people. This is something cold. And after praying with them, he shot them. That's not some kind of psychological individual problem there. That's deeply ingrained in the
Right.
spirit of the people. And
Wow.
white supremacy teaches something fundamental. It's the ethos. It's aggression, domination, and greed. That's what white supremacy teaches everybody. That must be Trump says he kept saying about aggression and we must dominate. He said, um, that's it. It's driven by that ethos. That is the spirit of a people. Like the spirit of black people is very clear. We want to play fair. That's it. That's the kind of justice we want. You don't
Yeah.
want retribution for justice. King didn't teach that. Before that, Mary McLeod Bethune didn't teach that. Justice is not what Western minds think that uh, if you do a wrong, you got to equate that wrong with some act that's equal to that wrong. And then
Yeah.
you don't have, and the capital punishment is a thing you got to look at. You know that we don't want to get even. You can't get even. You can't. Reparations cannot pay for this.
No.
You know where I got that from?
Where
Sojourner Truth. She said that reparations been around a long time. After the Civil War, that's when it was first put on the table. John Conyers, our congressman from Detroit, put
Yes.
it back on the table. But the white Republicans back in the day brought up reparations for unpaid labor. Mentioned in his second inaugural, Lincoln alluded to it. He called
Yeah.
it unrequited labor. He said
You're right.
people didn't get paid for what they did, and we need to square that up.
We need to
But
square
when
that up.
they said Joan of Truth, she said, of course we do something for what we've been through. But I've born 13 children and saw them all sold into slavery. You can't pay for that.
You can't pay for that.
You can't pay for that. No, then money, it's got to be some other way, some transformative value, whatever that might be. But you can't do this with no money. She said, you should give us something. But are you asking me?
Right.
No.
Wow.
This isn't about money. This is way beyond money. The kind of damage that is done to the human spirit.
Right.
Yeah. So,
And not just to African American human
no,
spirit.
no,
I've
no.
seen you talk about the effect that it has on even white people.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
they
White
don't
people,
benefit from
yeah,
racism either.
the you can't, the indescribable violence visited on the indigenous populations. There were no one Indian. They were back again. There's no Indian language. And there's, you know, Choctaw, Chickasaw language,
Right.
Cherokee language.
Cherokee,
That's when these are people.
Ojibwe.
There was
Yeah.
no one Indian here. That's
Right.
what race did. The red race. When's the last time you seen a red Indian? Indians, a Zuni is darker than you. Some
Yeah.
Zunis, and a Crow might be light as a white man.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's crazy. But
So
if you see it through his filters, you can't see. He makes you think that
yes.
there's such a thing as race, and the major indicator is the color of your skin. And what makes it really ridiculous is that you and I know that that can't be true because the way we look.
Right.
May I
Yes.
need I say more? The way we look,
Yes.
we we look like anybody, any color.
I lived in Miami and people would walk up to me all the time and just start speaking in Spanish and I had to learn really quickly to say no habla español and they would get mad at me because
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm American. I'm not Dominican or it's like I'm sorry. They would get mad.
yeah. Well, now we owe that too. We know where that comes from. That during these two and a half centuries of slavery, the black woman became the special victim of the lust of brutes. It's not just Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings. White men at large had sex with black women. It's not just the master, it was the overseer. He was there. The guy who managed the plantation was there. The patty rollers, they were all had access to black women. And that's why we look the way we look. And if
Absolutely.
black people stop playing this colorism thing. We are human beings,
Yes.
whatever color we are.
Right.
And we're going to be proud of ourselves because we're human beings. And if you are lighter than me, it doesn't mean a darn thing. It's the experience that counts.
The
It's the
experience.
values, it's the beliefs, it's the emotional lives that we share. That's what makes, if you want to say, call that black, okay. Because I don't have any problem with being black or being
Yeah.
called black. I do have a problem with being called Negro because it's erroneous. It's a misnomer. I
Yeah.
can say white people is a misnomer. Okay, forgive you for that. You know, the word that they put on us, nigger. It's an invective term. It's a harmful word. I love my black hip hop brothers and sisters, but they got to get off of that. They got to get off. You know,
Doctor, that's a whole nother
yeah.
conversation. Like I don't know if you remember Big Ant from KMOJ. He's down in New Orleans now.
Oh yeah.
He's gonna come on in a few weeks and we're gonna talk about what's in a word.
Yeah, but we got to deal with that word.
Yep.
I've used it myself because I wasn't always conscious.
Right.
Like people, we gotta stop playing like we were always conscious.
Right.
When people are, we all have some ignorance. Uh, I don't blame people for being ignorant if they're genuinely ignorant.
Right.
There's some people not ignorant. They will themselves be ignorant. There's a lot of white people play that trick on black people. It's willful ignorance. You know, I'm not talking about that. People, we didn't know any better.
Yeah.
And you got to admit that.
Yeah.
I didn't know. It was like the air. Black people called one another out of their name matter of factly because that's what white people call it. White supremacy taught us to do that,
Right.
disrespect one another. And then it showed some growth in that when black people used it, it was an in-house word, in-group word. I love him to death, but I have partly blamed Richard Pryor for that. That he brought,
Oh,
yeah, we took it out in space, out of the bounds of the communal values, is which you didn't call black people that name outside of the community. He was
right.
on stage with 10,000 people. And that's, and you can't blame the hip hoppers for pumping it up, NWA pumping it up, and
Yeah.
that, and I'm not putting that down. I'm trying to be a bit analytical about it, that you know why that is.
Yeah.
We need to correct it. You don't blame people for, especially our youth, for saying that. It's ignorance.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
ignorance can be fixed. It's not stupidity. Ignorance can be fixed. Stupid forever. If you can, if you that's not stupid. If somebody's
I love
ignorant,
you. I've been thinking about so many T-shirts. You've been putting some T-shirt ideas out while you've been talking, Dr. El-Kati. We've talked a little bit about um Africa, Egypt, Irish, European. We kind of talked about a lot of different people and cultures, even though our conversation is really kind of about slavery today. But it is also Ethnic
it's always a
Equality Month.
statement. Okay. Yeah.
Ethnic Equality Month is very.
Yeah.
I had never heard of that either.
Yeah.
This podcast, I'm learning a lot. So it's Ethnic Equality Month, the time that gives us the opportunity to recognize the differences but the similarities between people. And
Right.
I automatically thought about the African diaspora, Pan-Africanism, and how that affected the world. And I want to see if I can get you to connect this notion of white supremacy. Did Was that before slavery or was it born out of slavery? And how did the diaspora, African specifically diaspora, the most recent
That's
one,
what,
yeah, how do they coexist? How do they clash? How do they relate?
it's a good question. I'm not glad you asked that question, but um, it's complex. Everything we do is complex. Human beings are complex beings. We're not simple. There's no such thing as a simple human being.
Right.
That's a contradiction in terms. You can act simple minded, of course, we always do that, but it's hard to figure out. We got to figure this stuff out. All of this is coming up, too much of it at once for people. They call it the new reckoning. Of people are saying things that they never said before in places that they never said it. That's true, and we got to be at least look at it through ambiguous eyes. Recognize whatever it is. Two things can be true, at the same time.
Right.
Say that. Um, and try to measure stuff. What we're going through right now is never quite happened at this level. Not this, but this is violence is has accompanied us ever since we got off those slave ships. Uh, Violence knows us, harms us. It's systematic violence. We've been killed in every way you could imagine. Human beings can be killed, and largely white people from among the white community are responsible for those horrific crimes. The people at the institutions really. Now we're talking about race where it should matter, where it's largely institutional. That's the
Yes.
government. Uncle Sam, Malcolm used to say, that's who made these laws. It's who made you 3/5 of a man. you know, uh,
Yeah.
an article of merchandise. Again, George Washington, a species of property. Well, there's a lies, and we have to say the George Washington lied. Because so well, you can't say that about George. He's a man, like
Right.
you he was maybe an exceptional man. I don't know, but that's a lie. I'm no species of property. It's in the first article of the American Constitution, Section 3, that black people are defined as three-fifths of other human beings. There's
Which
no
one was that?
That's in the Constitution.
In
That's
the
in the
first?
article of the American Constitution. Before you get to the Bill of Rights, see there were 7 articles at
Yes.
the beginning of they discovered that wasn't enough, and they didn't address human rights, individual rights, and so forth. And then you had the amendments. It's called an inclusive 10. The 10 amendments, which you do with freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and so forth. That was not in the Articles of Confederation.
Okay.
But the thing about us being species of property, uh, not fully fleshed human beings, was written, and people were taught to view us as subspecies. I
Yeah.
mean, we learned this from, I'll just pick on somebody who's so big, you're not supposed to pick on him. Thomas Jefferson. Of all the founding fathers, he is the most outstanding in certain ways. He's credited with writing the Declaration of Independence, and the Declaration of Independence is a monumental statement. He doctored on that. Of we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, uh, and they have the right to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Mhm.
Well, that's almost an adjustment of the great philosopher John Locke, the English
Yes.
philosopher. He's the one that Jefferson copied somewhat. But Locke said it right, what it's all about. He ended it by saying life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. Jefferson, well, he's right, and that's what it's about. Jefferson prettied it up with the word happiness. Or pursuit of happiness. What is that? That's too amorphous.
Yes.
But
Because
yeah,
the slaves were happy in the fields whistling all the time. So they pursued happiness and
yeah,
found it in those
yeah,
fields.
yeah, of course. And all we're saying about these brilliant, and they were brilliant, white men, and no white women were there. That's interesting. That's the thing that's coming up now with male chauvinism, and women are rising, rightfully so,
Right.
uh, against this male dominance, this uh, uh, man is the measure of all things, and so
Right.
forth. When the country was founded, women couldn't vote. See, uh, not slaves certain couldn't think about that. It took a long time for the 19th Amendment to finally come about,
Yeah.
and black men got the vote in 1870. Not black women, no, all white women. In fact, people like Susan B. Anthony and those got mad at Frederick Douglass, who was a feminist. He's a man, but he was a political feminist. He was the greatest voice for women's rights in the 19th century. It was Frederick Douglass. He was at the founding convention in Seneca Falls, New York, in 1848, and
Yes.
you standing up there with a statue next to Susan B. Anthony and Lucretia Mott and the 4 women who founded it. He was right there. He addressed the first conference in 1848. Frederick Douglass, in the last audience he addressed the night before he died with some women, white women, in Washington, D.C. He is my model is Frederick Douglass for my attitude toward women. That I am a political feminist. People say, "Well, you can't. You're not a woman." Yeah, I can. Yes, I can identify
Yes.
with
Yes.
with what they're
Absolutely.
talking about. Yeah, so I'm a political feminist. I'm a feminist, politically speaking. I can't be a woman, but but that way I can. Well, And I think that there are other men, the men I associate with, are political feminists,
Yeah.
because they know what that is. I mean, the kinship with respect to being oppressed
Absolutely. It
and
took
being,
Angela Davis a while to even embrace the fact that she was a feminist. She didn't consider herself a feminist at
yeah,
all. She was a revolutionary.
yeah. Well, a lot of people that didn't, women I know that didn't, they grew into it
Yeah.
because we all have been mizzled by this thing called white supremacy.
Yeah.
That I say to white people, uh, that's the dominant ideology of this country.
Yeah.
I got some white supremacy in me. I'm still fighting white supremacy. So if I can say I got some white supremacy in me, I know darn well, and Clark, I don't care how liberal you are, you got something in you. You can't live in this
Absolutely.
country without being affected by that doctrine, or what I call that secular religion.
Right.
It's a religion. It
Right.
functions as religion. The communists are more honest about it.
Yeah.
They say, look, forget God. We are atheists. And if you want to live in this country, and that happened for 91 years
It
under
did.
the communist regime, you could live in Russia, but you couldn't practice Judaism, you couldn't practice Islam, Islam, and you couldn't practice Christianity. All the churches and synagogues were closed
Gone. Yeah.
from 1917 until 1991. Yeah,
Wow.
you can be a Christian, but you got to go somewhere else.
Yeah. Goes
Yeah,
only in your head.
you could be a Jew, it was underground.
Yeah.
You couldn't be that. That's honest.
Yeah.
We're atheists. We don't believe in God. We don't believe religion. It's the opiate of the people, said Marx. It puts people to sleep. Marx wasn't totally right, but
Yeah.
religion can wake people up too.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm hoping that soon our churches will come out of the walls in our communities and interact more with us instead of waiting for us to come into their walls. But
You might have
maybe
to do that.
COVID's done a little bit more for that than it did before. But one thing you have not really touched on yet, and I really want to talk about the African diaspora and how because it's so specific. Like when they talk about diasporas, because I did a lot of research trying to make sure that I had all the angles covered here. So talking about the African diaspora and how you kind of tap into that spirit with your Pan-African conference. And I don't know if you still go down there. I have spent many wonderful moments at the Pan-African conference in Mankato, which is how I was first exposed to you anyway.
Uh-huh. Yeah, well, let's look at it this way. The diaspora refers to the scattering of Africans during the Atlantic slave trade, the scattering of the people from the motherland, the homeland, and taking us to the Atlantic islands of the sea, North, South, and Central America. That's the diaspora. It's a term religion historically associated with Jewish people
Yes.
and who are scattered around the world. That's all diaspora means, you scattered.
Yeah.
We are the original diasporic Africans through the slave trade. And this hemisphere, there's nowhere you can go where you don't find substantial Africans. In fact, in Brazil, where most of us went, most black people slaves went to South and Central America, not to the United States.
Right.
And in Brazil, is that the largest. There's only one country in Africa has a larger black community than Brazil, and that's Nigeria.
Okay.
Brazil is black and Native American mostly. The Portuguese are already a tiny people. They run things because of institutional racism, the doctrine of white supremacists. The people who run Brazil are white supremacists. You won't find maybe 2 or 3 black faces in anything like high political offices and so forth. And yet the most famous Brazil, this is a person in Brazilian modern history, is Pelé, the soccer player who just died.
Yeah.
Nobody more famous than him. That's
Yeah.
why you got to understand race is it's not human or personal. It's political.
It's political.
It's a political reality. When something is political, you're dealing with groups of people, not individuals.
Yeah.
Dealing with black people, Native American people. You can whoever, women. That's politics, and
Yeah.
that's how you can get along with certain white people if that is understood. It's not you. I'm fighting a system. You know, yes, you're white, but I don't think you have to feel the way white people are supposed to feel. Towards
Right.
people. You
Angry.
can you can search yourself.
They're
Uh,
so angry,
and
Dr. El-Kati. White people are just angry for some reason.
well, that's a part of the stuff that they don't understand about themselves. What they're talking about is privilege and I got to be the boss and so forth. It's like anything. I mean, bad, especially if it's a bad habit, it's hard to break.
Yes.
It's hard to break, but they know what's right and what's wrong. But it's so involved in the emotional life of white. If if you individualize that white person, that would be a psychological problem. Like I did, Thomas Jefferson. I think he was schizophrenic. The way we talk about that today, split personality.
Yeah.
He was he. There's nobody could talk worse about black people than Thomas Jefferson. His intellectual language. He called us everything but a child of God.
Yes.
Yeah. But yet he said things about us. He said things about we can't think. Well, yeah, our memory is as good as white people. But not original thought ever came to our head. We can't think, but we can remember. There wouldn't all these things about white people saying black people smell bad and stuff come from Thomas Jefferson. All these tropes, about black women are attracted to to what's the one? Not the ape, but his first cousin. That they're attracted to black women, and so forth as black men are attracted to white women. That's it. And we're definitely inferior. He did say one thing about music, and it's correct that musically speaking, they are mostly superior to us. He can only but he dampened that down with another sentence. But he said things like that. His primary statement, he said that um, um, I advance it. He's supposed to be a scientist. I advance it as a suspicion only. And whether originally um, made the way they are made by time and circumstances. The blacks are inferior to the whites, both in the endowments of mind and body. They're inferior. Uh, and then he said a statement that would upset a lot of people who follow Trump. He said that slavery is an exercise of the most boisterous passion, of unremitting degradation on the one hand and degrading submissions on the other. It teaches white children to be tyrants after the pattern of their parents. It destroys the will to work in white men, and above all, it robs man of God's greatest gift, and that is the gift of liberty. Indeed, I tremble for my country when I reflect that God is just and that his justice cannot sleep forever. He was presaging the Civil War. He knew this thing. I mean, he died about a quarter of a century before the Civil War, but
He
he
knew.
knew. He said,
Yeah.
that indeed I tremble for my country when I reflect that God is just and justice cannot sleep forever. This can't go on.
Absolutely not.
We got to do something. And other people, since the Civil War was inevitable, too, because you can't, well, as they say, God uh, cannot accept that premise, because
Yes.
liberty is an important thing for all people, freedom. And I tremble for my country when I reflect. This can't go on. This tension. That's what makes him schizophrenic to me. I'm not saying. Just saying. I'm just saying he kind of like was sometimes on both sides of the question. And of course, who knows what effect his long relationship with Sally Heming had on his thinking?
Right.
Because he was around her. His wife died when he was 38. He started sexual relationships with Sally Heming when she was 14. Today, that would be statutory rape.
Yes.
But this guy was about 36 years old when
Yeah.
she was 14, and they were together. You know, everybody knows that now, and,
Right. Yeah.
it was brought out in a book by this brilliant black woman historian. God, that was old. Uh, Annette Gordon Reed. Read her.
Okay.
Annette Gordon Reed. It's a hyphenated last name, Gordon Reed. She's got it. She's the one that blew this stuff up and
Yes.
changed history.
Wow.
Now they accept what she said because DNA proved that she was right. That
Yeah.
she had 6 pregnancies, and 4 of those children reached adulthood.
And that's the thing about about slavery. It's like, we don't no one wants to talk about it. No one wants to admit it. No one wants to think that
That's,
black people are owed anything.
yeah,
And I heard something. Do you think that talking about slavery makes white people feel guilty and black
a few.
people feel like victims?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true too. You know, we can't help but feel if you're thinking. I mean, there are black people like other people who it's like warfare. Some soldiers talk about would never mention. I had an uncle who was in World War II. He never said a thing about it. And I met another uncle in New York. He couldn't stop talking about his experience in World War II. So it does. There are many black people who don't want to hear anything, know anything about slavery or even segregation. When they moved north. That's tragic but true. I think that we have to face it. This is a part of we must have moral courage.
Moral
We
courage.
have we have a good deal of that, I think. And the fact that some of us can talk about it. You know, I'm a kind of lucky guy. I've been around people all my life who talked about it.
Yeah.
So I mean, most of my life. When I mean young, I'm a grandma's boy, so I got to jump on most people. I got to tell. My grandmother was a major nurturer in my life, so she all you get all the good stuff, and the bad stuff too. But yeah, but yeah, we have to talk about that. We have to confront. We're not going to heal. We're not going to get well, and neither will white people.
Yeah.
This will never be a country that is satisfied with itself until that episode, and it's a long episode,
Yeah.
is faced that America is the land of the free. True. It's also the home of the slave. True. Two
Yeah.
things can be true. You got to talk
Yes.
about both of them.
Yes.
Just freedom is associated with white people, slavery is associated with black people. That's the deal, McNeil. That's it. And you got to deal with that. And we know that
Yes.
the background out of which we spring is slavery. This institution, which was established, a legal institution with all kind of draconic laws and just unbelievable things that people can do when they're unrestrained, and that's
Yes.
what whites with regard to blacks historically has been unrestrained. They have feel that they have the right to be wrong regarding black people. That it's okay if you look good. Here's how deep why I think white supremacy is. The most recent tragedy in Memphis. I had to think about that.
Yeah.
5 black policemen. One of them might have had old enough to have a guy. I don't know how old he was, but he was a young man. uh, Children. Are you black or blue? That's what the police thing is when blacks join the police force. I know that from talking to police.
Yeah.
I've had black police friends, you
Yeah.
know, and I knew one white guy who I would call a friend, the policeman. But yeah, are you black or blue? Well, we're blue. That's the code,
Yeah.
and they unthinkingly, because they are consumed by the doctrine of white supremacy. And I admit that I got it in me, and they got a lot of it in them.
Yeah.
I know this much. I would bet I'm a betting man. I can't bet nothing, so I don't gamble and stuff like that. But here, the guy, if that young man had been white, I'm convinced, and I'm not a betting man, that you would have had a different outcome. They might have arrested him,
Yeah.
but they wouldn't beat him up. They wouldn't kill him. That's white supremacy. We've been taught not to see ourselves as fully fleshed human beings. With
Yeah.
just what the media has pumped in our head for lo these many generations, that we're criminals, that we're liars, we don't do anything right, we're no good people.
Right.
Well, I would say if you line up criminality, the roll call on who commits the most crimes, it would be white people
Absolutely.
who commit crimes that black people never heard of.
And
Because,
then that we could never
crimes
even
are
do, right?
racialized. Crimes are racialized, high crimes,
Right.
white collar crimes. What is that?
Yes.
All these fancy names for these crooks who rob people every day. And not only black people, you rob, somebody on the street. Now, I'm not excusing that,
Yeah.
but a white man could rob thousands of people at one time
Yes.
because he can rob an institution, a
Yes.
bank, or some of the fancy stuff that we don't know about.
Yep.
You know,
That's what happens.
embezzlement.
Yeah. I watch a lot of American Greed.
Yeah. And there are all kinds of crimes we never heard of. We just, I taught in prison for a good while too, and I still occasionally go there. And I know what black people go to jail for, more likely
Yeah.
go to jail. It's not one of these high crimes.
No.
It is, a passion thing. It's murder, uh, assault,
Yeah.
battery.
Drugs.
Yeah, well, I was going to say that for last, but I was trying to. You
But
give it.
all of that,
I was
all of
saying,
those that you mentioned probably stem from their drug habit. They're
yeah,
assaulting
yeah.
people
It's
right just
sometimes
for their
related,
habit.
but the con games, like people are good at short con. I'm a witness to that. They short con you and do all kinds of things. But they go to jail basically for 7 crimes, low level crimes. Most
Yeah.
of them, black people. They don't commit because they're not there to commit Wall Street crimes. They're not. Man, we just arrived in Wall Street uh,
Right.
15, 20 years ago. I remember when I was reading a book before I moved out here, just before. It was called the $50 billion Negro budget by D. Park Gibson, who was at that time was the only black man with any meaningful presence on Wall Street, only one. And he was alerting the business community that they should pay some attention to this $50 billion that black people spent. He was turning them on. There's 50 billion over there. You don't look at it to
Yeah.
get the juice flowing and get them buying, you know, soap powder or whatever, put them on television. He was trying to do them. They buy
Yeah.
stuff too. The white people are not the only one that stink, or even buy deodorant. We couldn't get on the deodorant thing, but now black people on every other commercial. We can say that because don't deny that not changed.
Yeah.
Don't deny. I can't deny that I spent most of my life now on a university, not one, but most of it. And I've been to 30 colleges in this state. I didn't
Wow.
teach it, but I was guest or something. Where, like Mankato, I have a long relationship with Mankato State, and helped to found that institution, Pan-African institution. So we just keep that in mind. I'm saying you should think critically, and to think critically is to be a bit ambiguous, not ambivalent, but ambiguous. Like you could see that it ain't all black and all white. It's kind of gray over there. That's called thinking when you do that.
Okay.
And don't come down hard on the first thing you think of something the opposite of what you know, what you think you know. Listen to the other fella. Might have a point. So much from other people that I didn't always agree with, and I found
Yeah.
out that we weren't that far apart.
Right.
But as there is a line that I draw, and I can't be friends with white people with whom I cannot share my story. Uh, you can't be my friend if I can't talk about my mama and dad and my people.
Yeah.
There's no way for you to be my friend and for me to pretend that they're not in the world.
Right.
And that's kind of one of the almost demands that whites make of black, uh, and friendship thing. Don't say nothing about black people. You don't see them like I don't see them.
Yeah.
Yeah, visible men. Another thought about our presence in this absence of it is a great book. It's called Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. He describes what people are talking about when he said this. The title of the book is Invisible Man. On the first, the second page, the opening of there's a quote. He says that I am an invisible man. No, I'm not one of your Hollywood ectoplasms. Nor am I one of the stories of Edgar Allan Poe. I'm a man of substance, of fiber, of liquid, of bone. It might even be said that I possess a mind, but I'm invisible, you understand, because people refuse to see me. That's, that's called social death. This is
Yeah.
what black people suffer from, social death. That's what slavery was, segregation, unsegregated social death. We live in a breathing human being, but people don't recognize you. So you
Yeah.
might well be dead.
I had a supervisor at a previous job that told me she doesn't see me as a black woman.
Of course, I heard that one.
Yeah, she saw me as a great she saw me doing really well at my so she saw me as what I do and not what I was, and she looked me in my eye and really thought that she was being sincere and that I would appreciate the
Yeah,
fact that she didn't see
yeah.
me for who I am. It's like, ah,
Uh,
okay. What do
that's
you
what
say? I don't even know what to say to that. I just had to walk out the room.
it's a part of the racial vocabulary, is that, and they think if person think they call themselves liberal by
Yeah.
not acknowledging the reality of black people. as black people, like
Right.
any other people, there are Jewish people in the society. They can be that.
Yeah.
And there are all kinds of new people coming here. You know, the whole thing of you mentioned diaspora. We're the
Mm-hmm.
original diaspora. We're diasporic Africans. And we'll never be anything else because that is where we came from. That geographic space on the earth. We never get away from that any more than a white person from Europe can deny that he's European.
Right.
So geography is very essential to identity. It's very essential. So we are not in Africa, but our ancestors were. We know we came from there. And
Right.
that geographic identity says it's okay to say I'm African American or
Oh,
I'm black if you prefer. I've got nothing but high respect for people who call themselves black, even if they're not black. I know what you think. I know what you're thinking. Yeah, yeah. And I tell you over the hump. You know what I mean? You over the hump. I'm black. You
right.
scared? Is anything wrong with being a black person? That's that white supremacy
Yeah.
coming. And we don't want to tit for tat with white people.
No.
You want to go back, um, talking about their looks, being
Yeah.
bad. You could play that game too. That's another thing I love about black people. They have not. I mean, they get mad,
Yes.
with white people and that, but they don't have. We don't have a litany of names to call white people. I
No.
can name them all of them on, and they're not brutal words. It's like cracker. Poor cracker in Georgia. Um, Poor white trash. That's a white class thing. It can white people call other white people
Right.
white
That
trash.
that didn't
That's
come
not,
from us.
that's class.
Yeah.
That's not our word.
Yeah.
Cracker is our word. Peckerwood is our word.
Oh, yes.
And Mr. Charlie is our word. Miss Ann is our word. Peggy Sue is our word. It's almost playful the way when black
Right.
people talk
I
about,
know.
yeah, Miss now they advanced it up. The young
Yes,
people
Dr. King.
call the white man Chuck. Chuck, or the man.
Yes.
Book, Roland wrote a book, Going to See the Man. He's talking about a job.
The man. Yes.
But we don't have vicious terms for white people. He got
Yeah.
upset over hunky. Let me say, that was kind of fun though. But hunky, when
It
Stokely said that, I had never heard that said before.
before your son said it?
No, 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 no. Stokely, my son is named
Oh,
Stokely
yeah,
Carmichael.
okay. The original one, yes.
The original Stokely in 1966.
Yes.
And because he said HONKY, honky. I had heard of hunky, HUNKY, from
Oh,
my days in Cleveland, where
right.
there's a
Chunky.
population who lived on the west side of Cleveland was made up of this, what they call melting pot aggregate of bohunks. That's what it is. Of people from Eastern Europe. Other white people call them bohunks,
Okay.
hunky. When
Hunky.
I heard it from Stokely, I had never heard the word honky, HONKY. Other people
Yeah.
might have, but I don't know where he got it from. And I spent a whole night with him discussing that. And
Yes.
I miss talking about it. But we don't have honky, and it drove some white people crazy. You calling me names? Yeah. Well, yes. Now you're
Thank you,
uncomfortable,
Dr.
even though you don't know what it means. And
Davis.
because whitey, where are those terms now? They're gone.
I don't know the last time I had heard hunky. Like, and
Yeah,
we
yeah.
and crack, like we don't, they're not there. I don't even
They're
think that
whitey.
we're
It's,
about
it's
to.
a passing phrase.
Yeah, our
But
comedians can't even say it anymore.
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't even think Dave Chappelle says any of those words.
no, that's what I mean. We're not. If we were vitriolic and hateful, they would still be in our vocabulary. It's gone. But his words, all of his words, he call us, beginning with the N word, is so ugly you can't say it. Everybody knows what you mean.
Right?
So, so I think that black people are pretty good as far as groups of people are concerned.
I think
I'm
so
glad
too.
to be one of them. I think they're pretty good. We're not
Yeah.
half as bad as the propaganda say we are.
Absolutely not. Because we just have to learn to rely on our own. We need to, look inward a little bit more, I feel like.
Yeah. Oh,
One I wanted to make sure, and you did mention Frederick Douglass a little bit already, but
okay.
I know that he's one of your favorites, and I found this picture of you.
Oh
And
yeah,
this was
it's in my. Yeah.
yeah, this was from actually a video, I think. And I noticed you had him in the background. I was like, I have to share this picture because I
Mhm.
know that he is
Yo, that's
so
my man.
special and meaningful to you. So I
He's
want
my
to
man.
end on something positive that you can just glow about.
Yeah, yeah. I can do that. I can. Um, Douglas, one of the great spirits ever at any point in history, is a remarkable human being. Was once called a thing, as he said it. A slave until he was 21 years old. And yet, I think that Douglas was one of the most literate people of 19th century America. And I'm talking about Jefferson too. I think he was equal, but he never spent a day in school.
Yep.
Never went to school. And yet, in the end, he was, and many people say that he was one of the masters of the English language, of the language of his time, 19th century English. He mastered that. Plus, he learned to speak four languages. I don't think Jefferson spoke four languages. I know he spoke French. Um, but he was the timeless, his statements. Baldwin is for me, he's the man of the 20th century, in that I have never read two people who are more candid in what they say, more courageous, unscared. Anybody will say it if they think it's the truth.
Yes.
Yeah. Let me you know, back up to Douglas. Something that James Baldwin said in a book called The Fire Next Time in 1963. It's a part of an essay, but the part that I like is what he said. He left for Paris when he was 24 years old. Hardly had a dime, had some little scholarship or something. Because he said that I better get out of here because somebody's going to call me nigger just once too often, and somebody's going to die. I don't care if it's me or him. Somebody's going to die. So I got to get out of here. I've been a junkie, and he observed, the behavior of white people. He had it a T to a T. And when he was in Paris, he got into the groove with Parisians and so forth, who were French are racist too. All Europeans are.
Yeah.
They're racist. I know that from being in Morocco. Not just French. Well, that's what Baldwin, he hung out with the people, the Algerians. He said, I noticed that they weren't so hard on me when I went to Paris. I was disarmed because nobody looked at me and said, yeah. He said, I figured out that in Paris, the Algerians are the nigger. And so that took some weight off of me. They were running the kitchen hell. But he said that, and that's when I was writing in Paris, and that's when I came to understand that the American white man has long since lost his grip on reality. When I saw them over there buying everything and insulting everybody, and the tragedy of it was they didn't even know that they were insulting people. And then I remember that this was the way it was with me when they insulted me. They didn't mean it.
Wow.
They just simply didn't recognize that I was human. For instance, I'm not happy, and I never touch watermelon for all sorts of reasons. And I'm not a nigger, although you call me one. If I'm a nigger, that means you created something you needed, and whatever a man creates is basically an extension of himself. That is absolutely true. I'm still shocked by the fact that most white Americans sincerely believe that the country was settled by Gary Cooper or John Wayne. And they still elect their political leaders based on how closely they resemble Gary Cooper or John Wayne. Uh, I want to say this. If you are compelled to lie about any aspect of anybody's history, you're therefore compelled to lie about it all. And this means that if I'm not what I am been told I am, then you're not what you've been told you are either.
Right. Yes.
And then he said, there's a lot more to it, but the
Yeah.
line, he was talking about how Americans fed the propaganda into communism and Mao and so forth. He said that the real problem in the world for Americans really not Khrushchev's Russia, Khrushchev, or Mao's China, or Castro's Cuba, but it's the sad and simple fact that Americans have become victims of their own brainwashing.
Right.
So if you think I hold all that cotton in Georgia and Alabama and Mississippi simply because I loved you, you've done something terrible to yourself. You are surely mad. But Douglas, I mean, that's clear. I mean, Douglas, he is more
I,
morally courageous,
yes.
unscared to say things that are real, things that people think about, are scared
Yes.
to say. He wasn't afraid. He's the most courageous writer I've ever read. And that's
Yeah.
genuine.
And I think we most know him for his speech when he was invited to give the speech for the fourth, for Independence Day. He's like, I really don't know why you guys invited me to give this speech.
But Douglas said it best, and that it's a lesson that Americans should take heed of because we're at that moment. He said, here we are, and here we are likely to be. To imagine that we shall be eradicated is absurd and ridiculous. We can be changed, we can be modified, or even assimilated, but never extinguished. This is our country too. And we shall neither die out, nor shall we be driven away, but we shall go with this people, either as a testimony against them or as an evidence in their favor throughout their generations. That's who we are. We're the real people. We got the whole story. We know the top and the bottom. We've been both places. Yes, we have. Now the bottom people we be, but top people we're becoming.
Yes.
We've seen it all. The worst and the best there is about America. We think there's something good about America, and that is its ideals, IDEALS. And we think that's good.
Yeah.
And that's what we're fighting for. You know,
Absolutely.
for the human family. We don't want anybody left out of the family. And
Yes.
we're opposed to anybody who oppresses anybody because they don't look like you.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's really kind of stupid.
it is.
And we're coming there. Bottom line, we're getting there. And this is going to be the end of the story. Either we win
Huh.
or America loses.
Yes.
We'll win.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
So we filled up 2 hours.
You're kidding me.
We it's flown by.
I don't believe that. Really? Oh my.
Yes.
Well, I
And
want to
I
thank
feel
you.
like there's still so much more that we can talk about. And so I know we spoke yesterday, and
Yeah.
I am so happy that you're going to come back and talk with me about Reconstruction. We're
Oh
going
yeah.
to do that. Yeah, we're going to do that around Juneteenth because that's going to be an awesome time to do
Uh-huh.
that.
Yeah.
So I'll make sure that I work with Brother Noor to get that on the calendar for you.
Okay.
I appreciate you
I,
so much. Do
I
you have
appreciate.
one thing that you want to leave the audience with? I mean, I feel like that's what you just did, but I wanted to give you that last opportunity. Is there anything you want to leave them with today?
Well, there's so much to say. Oh my, I'll say something. Martin said something like Douglas. Um, uh, he, oh God, I got a blank. But it's about. It's very similar to what I said about what Douglas said years ago, and King said it in recent times before he died about who black people are. He said, before the pilgrims landed, we were here. Before the pen of Thomas Jefferson etched the majestic words of the Declaration of Independence across the page of history, we were here. We were bruised and beaten. Our, we built the homes of our masters while suffering gross injustice and shameful humiliation. If the inexpressible cruelties of slavery could not stop us, then the opposition we now face will surely fail. We are at that moment. If it couldn't stop us from being free from slavery, that's another chapter. We're gonna get this one. We
Absolutely.
gotta get. We gotta get. We knocked Jim and Jane Crow out of the box. Segregation. Yeah. Now we got to get rid of the doctrine of white supremacy. Help the world. We hope we get some help from somebody. It's not just our fight. White supremacy is anti-human.
Yeah, and it's
It's against
everywhere.
the human family. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's all over the world. So we got to knock this sucker out of the box so we can reach those transformative values that we crave for above race. You know,
Yeah.
the age of empathy, which human beings have the capacity for in one another. Yeah, I think it's true. So it's been a delight talking to you. It
Yes.
really has.
Thank
I
you. Thank
enjoyed
you.
it
Thank you.
anytime.
Yes. And I got a shameless plug. I really, really want to get your son on my show.
Well, I believe he will come. He talks a little bit about his music. You can call him and see
Yeah.
see what see
Well,
what.
more, not just about his music, but just
Yeah,
about
no,
his experience
yeah,
growing up with a dad like you and growing up in Minnesota. And there's
yeah,
just so many other things to talk to him about as well.
yeah. He's got a little stuff. Been around the world, so
Yes,
he should know something.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much again.
Well,
Everyone in the chat is saying thank you, Sweet
thank
Jamaica, Light Eyes. spiritual thought leader, Dr. Dady Priest. Thank you, Tall Pumps, everyone who stopped by at Facebook, everyone who is with us on YouTube. Thank you, thank you, thank you for sharing your Saturday evening with me. Now you can go and enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.